Hello everyone, welcome back. Sorry, it's been a minute. Nothing alarming, but I had a little accident and had a very bruised up face. So I didn't want to get on here because, vanity and stuff. I'm totally fine, by the way, so don't worry about me. But anyways, we are still in chapter 10. It's called the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic. I am going to try to get some of this hammered out for you guys today. And thank you for coming back for more. I know this one's been taking a long time. Okay, so the next section is called Frenzied Attacks of Unrelenting Rage. When he launched the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, David Smith left a loose end dangling in his past. He'd never actually received his PhD in pharmacology. He'd completed a 2-year research project on amphetamines and their effects on groups of confined mice, but he never finished his dissertation. Although he shrugged off the lapse, he'd already completed medical school after all, and he'd taken quickly to his new life in the Haight. It surprised many of his closest friends, and in our interviews, he was reluctant to admit it. It wasn't like him to leave something undone. It's pretty impressive, actually. So he's already been to medical school, and now he's also getting an additional doctorate, a PhD. That takes a lot of time and money. Even in its unpublished form, Smith's research on mice defined him, creating the larger-than-life personality who would eventually be known as Dr. Dave. In my obsessive way, I found as much of his research as I could. I saw that Smith had published a brief article based on his study at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic's own house organ, the Journal of Psychedelic Drugs, in 1969. It wasn't nearly as robust as his full thesis would have been, but it gave me something to go on. Before long, I was noticing parallels between Smith's mice and the family. That's not good. So the family are his little lab rats. At first, I was inclined to disregard these as the product of my more speculative side. I saw no purpose in linking the behavior of mice in a controlled experiment to the behavior of people in the world at large. But I took another look when I saw that Smith himself had made such a connection. He spoke of his mice as proxies for human beings. It's not good. Mad scientist, right? His research started with 16 albino mice. With the assistance of other researchers, he separated these into 2 groups of 8 in aggregate settings, small, closely confined communities intended to simulate crowding. Then he injected the mice with amphetamines. Over the next 24 hours, they transformed from docile animals into frantic combatants, fighting one another until they died either from injuries, self-inflicted wounds from over-grooming, or simple exhaustion. Okay, so if you did those experiments and you saw those results, and you're likening it to humans, would you really want humans behaving like that? I contend no, but I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to see if the humans would behave like the mice did. Not good. The violence was unremitting. Smith described frenzied attacks of unrelenting rage. Afterward, all that remained in the blood-spattered cages were scattered, dismembered body parts. Simply by confining the animals in close quarters, he'd increased the toxicity of the amphetamines more than 4 times. In another attempt, some of the mice were dosed with other chemicals, mescaline, chlorpromazine, or reserpine, R-E-S-E-R-P-I-N-E. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Reserpine. Before they received amphetamine injections. The extra drugs sometimes had a sorting effect, segregating the mice that would kill from the mice that wouldn't. Or they had a soothing effect, all but eliminating the violent tendencies. Smith told me he'd started his research having foreseen an influx of amphetamine abusers in San Francisco. He didn't say how he'd predicted that influx, but he was right. In the summer of '67, as he opened his clinic, amphetamines exploded in popularity in the Haight. When the speed scene hit, it was a total shock to everybody, he told me. Suddenly, what I'd learned in pharmacology relative to amphetamines was applicable to people. Again, same question. If he knows that's true, is he using that to experiment on people? I would consider that pretty unethical. Throughout Love Needs Care, Smith draws parallels between the rodents he'd studied and the speed-addled hippies in the Haight. The mice on speed, he wrote, become inordinately aggressive and assaultive, turning upon one another with unexpected savagery. Their violent behavior is probably intensified by confinement, for it is strikingly similar to that observed in amphetamine abusers who consume the drugs in crowded atmospheres. Makes you want to steer clear of amphetamines, am I right? In the Haight, Smith watched as people living cheek by jowl took huge doses of speed, inspiring paranoia and hallucinations. Once peaceful and well-adjusted, the speed freaks of San Francisco now lashed out with murderous rage at any real or imagined intrusion, assaulting, raping, or torturing to relieve the paranoid tension. Cut off from the straight world, crammed together in inhuman conditions and controlled by chemicals, Smith concluded they behaved quite naturally, like rats in a cage. But when I spoke to Smith, he was quick to discount these parallels. I happened to study amphetamines before they hit the Haight, he said. The Haight didn't give me the idea. It's kind of like a historical accident. Kind of like a coincidence. Do I believe in it? Not usually. I was studying LSD before LSD hit the Haight too. I mean, come on, guy. Too coincidental for me. In fact, according to Dr. Eugene Schoenfeld, who participated in a portion of Smith's rat research in 1965, LSD was an integral component of the project. Smith and his colleagues would inject the rats with acid in hopes of making them more suggestible before he gave them amphetamines. Suggestibility was among the most prized effects of LSD from a clinical perspective. And again, this makes you think, is this how Manson sort of brainwashed his family? And the whole MK Ultra projects in general, the CIA was very interested in LSD, and it's a rabbit hole. I don't know. Like I said, you guys don't seem too interested in this book. However, that's my own fault for not being super diligent in presenting it. However, it's a rabbit hole that I find fascinating. The whole LSD, CIA, mind control stuff. It's so compelling. It's so evil, but it's so compelling. It's just, I guess it was just the times. I mean, the things that were going on in society at the time. I don't even know what to say about it. It's such a crazy time. All the experiments, the ones that we do know about, we really don't know much about it. But what we do know is they used a lot of LSD. They tried to control people's minds. And as we continue on, you'll see that it seems more and more likely that Manson did the same. Whether it was he was prompted to do it by the CIA or FBI or who knows who, that we don't know and we can't prove, but the coincidences are there for sure. So suggestibility was among the most prized effects of LSD from a clinical perspective, and yet Smith kept LSD out of the official documentation of his research. Why? If it's the most compelling thing or the most prized effect, why is it a secret? Why is it a secret? Why are you keeping it out of your documents? The article he published in the Journal of Psychedelic Drugs never mentioned acid. Probably because it would have found him, maybe he wanted to absolve himself of some sort of guilt associated with it, is my opinion. I asked Smith if LSD was a part of his protocol. He denied it. Then a moment later, without provocation, he reversed himself. Yeah, I stuck LSD in them, he said, but he couldn't explain why. I was sticking all different kinds of drugs in them, he added. In his recollection, LSD produced disorganized behavior, but not violent behavior. The rats would just wander around in a daze. If you've noticed that I've used rats and mice interchangeably, there's a reason for that. Smith used them interchangeably. too, even though the two species have vastly different behavioral patterns, especially in groups. That sounds like sloppy research or sloppy semantics. Did he use mice and rats? Or did he use one thing and just call them two different things? It's not very good science either way you look at it. In his Journal of Psychedelic Drugs article, he calls them mice. In Love Needs Care, and another book he published, they're rats. Schoenfeld insisted that he'd worked with rats during his part of the research, but Smith was adamant that they were mice, and he couldn't explain his confusion on the subject. Maybe he was partaking of the LSD himself, who knows? Like the San Francisco Project and Roger Smith's amphetamine research project, some of David Smith's research, according to his academic papers, was funded by the National Institute of Mental Health, which, remember, the CIA funneled money through that organization. Which, as mentioned earlier, later acknowledged that the CIA used it as a front for LSD research. I'm telling you, the CIA did some shady stuff. And though David never mentioned it in his writing, his work owed a clear debt to the landmark research of another NIMH psychologist, John B. Calhoun, who studied rat populations since 1946. Now, that is a job I would not want. Rats are disgusting, and you could not pay me enough to involve myself with them, I don't think. Calhoun reported that rats in confined groups, even without drugs, became uncharacteristically aggressive. They'd erupt in rape, murder, cannibalism, and infanticide. A dominant male rat emerged in the behavioral sink, Calhoun's term for his aggregated rat cultures, subjugating other males into a tribe of cowering, enfeebled followers, and organizing female rats into a harem of sex slaves. Wow, who knew rat communities were so complicated? The strangest group to emerge was the probers, hypersexualized male rats that stalked and raped both males and females and often cannibalized their young. Gosh, whatever turns a normal rat into this is something we should probably not give to anyone, human or rat. The probers would commit frenzied and berserk attacks against rat families sleeping in their burrows, leaving the remains of half-eaten victims. Again, no drugs were involved here. The probers emerged simply as a result of their confinement. That's interesting. So they didn't even get the drugs? They deferred only to the dominant male rat, fleeing if he caught sight of them. Interesting. Calhoun's study was a watershed. In the mid-60s, amid growing concerns about population density, social scientists, politicians, and journalists cited him to explain the riots in America's overcrowded ghettos. His term behavioral sink, defined as the outcome of any behavioral process that collects animals together in unusually great numbers, aggravating all forms of pathology that can be found within the group. It entered the scientific lexicon almost right away. David Smith used it extensively in his writing and in interviews with me. Though Smith never mentioned Calhoun by name, his research was essentially a continuation. He sought to control the pathologies of rats, or was it mice, in crowded environments by aggravating them with amphetamines. He concluded that amphetamines were more toxic to rats in groups than rats alone. Their crowding essentially exacerbated the effects of the stimulant. And this conclusion, like so much in Smith's research, confused me. I didn't see how it could be objective and unbiased. According to Calhoun, the rats' violence wasn't intensified by confinement, but created by it. So what difference did it make if Smith shot them up with amphetamines? It seemed like the equivalent of studying drunk, inexperienced ice skaters to learn about alcohol intoxication. The novice skaters were going to fall down on the ice anyway, regardless of whether they'd been drinking or not. Plus, the more interesting subtleties of Calhoun's research, the emergence of a dominant male, a harem of subservient females, and an underclass of probers, all of which, it had to be said, sounded a lot like the family, had gone entirely unnoted in Smith's project. Why do you think that is? I think it seems obvious to me that he didn't want to be associated with human outcomes that may have been, he may have taught these techniques to someone, and he didn't want to be associated with those outcomes. That's just what I surmise anyways. I wondered if amphetamines, with or without LSD, had increased the dominant male's grip on his followers. Given how eerily Smith's research prefigured the creation of the family under David's nose in the Haight during the summer of '67, I wondered if he had deliberately underreported it. I say yes. I've never come close to proving that he did, but I haven't been able to explain the holes in it either. Why would he use LSD to induce suggestibility in rats before injecting them with amphetamines and making them berserk? Yeah, why would you? Why would you do that? Unless you want the outcome that you are investigating. Past a certain point, Smith had little interest in helping me sort it out. I was just talking about the parallels to what happened with the Manson family, I said, and when I tried to describe your research, I just kept getting hung up on. Well, then why don't you just forget about the research then? Just delete the whole thing from your book. I'm sure he would have loved for that to happen. That's probably why he deleted it from his own research, right? It was important, I said. You're spending way too much of your and my time on it. Take what you want and reject the rest. All right, guys, I know that was a short one. However, like I said, I wanted to give you something. I feel like I am back on the mend and ready to do this. I will be back with more soon, I promise. And I'm so glad you guys came for this little tiny tidbit. I really do promise we're going to get through this. And I do have an idea for the next book. So, plus just being in this new office and getting the hang of it, it's been a lot. The summer went by really fast. A lot of it, my family was on vacation. I feel like I'm making excuses. I kind of am. But new job, very short summer, a little bit of an accident. Yeah, it's been a weird couple of months. So thank you all for bearing with me. It'll get better. Job's going good, but it's definitely kind of the same job, but different. So just a learning curve and all new people and stuff. So it's taken me a minute to adjust. So forgive me. I apologize. And I know that you guys are the best fans, or I don't know if fans is the right word, but you guys are the best. And I just want to say thank you. I do not take it for granted. All right. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye.